You know, most chaps straight from school never really find out what the Navy is like until they actually get in. Now, what do you remember about those early days? There's a sort of settling in period, isn't there?
When I joined at Raleigh, you mean? Nobody knows what branches you're going into. You'll have a good idea, but it's generally seaman's work and a general working up period of 6 weeks, which includes marching, mathematics and English exams that the Navy insist on, and other instruction such as to do with the ship, and ropes, and quite a bit of sport.
There's always one word that causes an awful lot of trepidation in people, and that's discipline. What about discipline? Is it really that bad?
Obviously the discipline is there, more so in training than when you actually join your first ship. There's lots of marching, people are shouting, but it's not as strict as they make it out to be.
Apart from all the study and the marching about, what about recreation? I mean, athletics. There's a gym, I believe.
Yes, there's a very well-equipped gym just behind the quarters that we were allotted. You get about 4 or 5 periods a week to go down there. It's normally organised. It's terrific, you know, the teamwork, and it's really tiring too. I couldn't stand gym work much myself.
What about cross-country running? Was that for you?
No, not at all. I always try to skive out of that. I did do swimming, a lot of swimming. They've got a beautiful pool up there. You have to take your naval test, of course, and then after that you can go during the night or any time you have free. They normally give you an afternoon off once a week to get you swimming in, and I did this because this is my sport.
I believe your sport's also sailing, yes?
Oh yes, I've done a lot of sailing. I sailed before I joined up, and they gave me a chance at Raleigh, at Jupiter Point, to do a lot of it. They've got quite a few classes of sailing boats. They've got your small ones, your mirror dinghies and your bosuns, and they even go as far as the bigger yachts, which some weekends I believe they do have excursions.
There is a bit of an impression that you don't get much spare time. What happens in the evenings? Do you go out of camp?
Oh yes, you can go out of camp should you so wish to. It's a distance into town, but that's no problem. Catch the ferry across. There's quite a bit to do in the camp as well. You've got your NAFI, which on occasional nights you get dances in, and you can also buy alcohol there. There's a cinema, there's a NAFI shop, and you've also got television.
With all this talk about recreation, we mustn't forget study. You did mention study earlier, but is there much study in classrooms?
Oh yes, there's quite a few lessons every week in the classroom for damage control, your different knots, your seamanship in fact, which is the basic training.
You know, what worries a lot of fellas is leaving home and having to make new friends when you get into the Navy. They think it's difficult. Did you find it difficult making friends?
I thought exactly the same thing, in fact. But everybody I found when I got there was in the same boat and just wanting to talk to somebody, wanting to know what everything was about, and nobody knew. And this way they mingled. And the class, well, should I say, the people that joined in that same, at the same time, stayed in that same class during the whole 6 weeks at Raleigh, and people who were going into the same branch moved off together, and thus you keep your friends, you know, and you make up pretty well together.
Well, you leave your initial training and you join a ship. As a seaman, even though your trade is radio operator, what seamanship jobs do you get up to?
Well, as such, everybody mucks in on the cleaning overall of the ship. When you're not at your job, everybody mucks in to clean the ship. My personal job for the next couple of weeks until it gets changed is the passages. I have to make sure that every morning they're up to scratch. And another place of work is the mess. Before I go on duty, I have to make sure that my mess is cleaned and ready for action stations or for rounds, whatever the circumstances may be.
There are boats as well that you're mixed up in, I believe.
Yes, you have one of most every branch go out in the crash boat and the sea boat. The difference is that the crash boat is for when the helicopter lands, the crash boat goes out, there's always an RO on board. And the sea boat, 4-man overboard, and other circumstances, there is always an RO on board.
RO, that's radio operator, of course. It's a specialization of the seaman branch, but what does it entail on board ship?
Well, I am an ROW. That's electronic warfare. I work in the electronic warfare office, which is midships, and I receive and analyze radio signals. WD. Oh, Roger. Your transmission bearing 09015 miles. Zero, sir. We have contact and transmission bearing 09015 miles. Identified as a NATO warship.
Roger. Mike Temple is also a radio operator, but tactical instead of warfare. This doesn't make him any more or less fortunate than Bob Grokert, but it does mean that he has different jobs to do. He's responsible for receiving and transmitting signals by autotelegraphy and also, even in today's Navy, by flags. Visual signals still having much the same meanings as they did years ago. He's the right-hand man to the officer of the watch with regard to signals and identifying other ships. Something else he has to be expert with is the signal lamp, another inheritance from the past, but still highly important in the Navy of today. Meet Chef Dowtry. He's a member of the Supply and Secretariat branch, and he takes an enormous pride in what is one of the most important jobs in the Navy, either at sea or at a shore establishment. It may not sound a terribly romantic thing to be a chef, but if you're a keen baker like Chris Dowtry, it's a joy to work with up-to-date equipment and to have endless opportunities to come up with something just a bit special, regardless of the fellows who are content to settle for sausages and chips. The chefs in a ship like this are capable of cooking to the highest professional standards, which is just as well, for in these diplomatic days, visits from heads of state or even royalty are nothing out of the ordinary. And like his fellow chefs, Chris Dowtry takes particular pride in the finishing touches after the basic cooking. Peter Clark is what's known in the Navy as an MEM, Marine Engineering Mechanic. The job is self-explanatory, really. They're in touch most of the time with marine equipment. And here, he's busy taking the temperature and pressure readings in the gas turbine control room, a far cry from the boiler room in the ships of past generations. And it's far easier to wield a clipboard than a shovel. Mind you, there are more practical sides to the job. They do their share of the cleaning up and they operate and maintain machinery, even lowly but essential machinery like the fire pump. Kevin Pounder is also a mechanic, but this time an ordnance electrical mechanic, a group sometimes known as the heavyweight gang. They're the fellows who supply and maintain the power, whether it's the normal domestic power throughout the ship or working on the switchboard with generators or heavy electrical machinery, even the motors associated with the engine room. And of course, the missiles. Electrical and electronic equipment used in the Royal Navy today is pretty complex, and top-line maintenance is essential. Also essential is a spot of variety, and OEM Pounder has chosen to be a ship's diver, something which members of most branches can do, though the majority of them are seamen.
Door fan on air.
Test equalization.
Door fan heard to be closed. Equalizing valve seen to be shut. 150.
Divers are very necessary in a ship like Kent. They carry out urgent underwater repairs should dockyard help not be at hand, and they're involved in regular underwater inspections of the ship's hull.
Bend up, test for leak.
The spit and polish side of the Navy, though not as predominant at sea as it is at the training establishments, is certainly not forgotten completely. As the ship has put in at Gibraltar, divisions have been ordered. Now this means simply a parade and inspection in best blues. Not a terribly common occurrence, much to the relief of most, but useful for morale and discipline. And as the ship's alongside, another sort of inspection. The uniform this time a little more trendy. The object? To sample the varied types of entertainment Gibraltar has to offer, and to show that the Navy knows how to relax as well.